Wiccan wickedness. I often critique Christianity in terms of its central mythology. I think mythology is very important. It provides us with the stories that define our relationship to the world and to each other. It defines our own nature. It serves to provide an ethical framework for behaviour. And it can provide a sense of meaning and purpose. Whether they like it or not, I view all religions in terms of mythology. They're not primarily about facts, but about meaning. Sometimes we're aware of our stories as mythology, and sometimes we're not. I'm sure that religious stories are not the only way that mythology finds expression in our culture. I think with time, many of our other stories, including some from within the sciences, will reveal themselves as having been mythological. So these stories are not primarily about describing some objective reality, but about defining our relationship to and our response to the world around us and to each other. I'm highly critical of the Christian mythology because I think it results in a very unhealthy relationship with the world, with other people, and even with ourselves. However, I'm not going to revisit these things today. Instead, I'm going to consider a very different mythology embodied in a loose collection of teachings that go by the name of Wicca. If you don't know what Wicca is, here is a dictionary definition for you from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. A religion influenced by pre-Christian beliefs and practices of Western Europe that affirms the existence of supernatural power, such as magic, and of both male and female deities who inhere in nature, and that emphasizes ritual observance of seasonal and life cycles. Wikipedia describes it in this way. Wicca, also known as the craft, is a modern pagan, syncretic, earth-centered religion. Considered a new religious movement by scholars of religion, the path evolved from Western esotericism, developed in England during the first half of the 20th century, and was introduced to the public in 1954 by Gerald Gardner, a retired British civil servant. Wicca draws upon ancient pagan and 20th century Hermetic motifs for theological and ritual purposes. I'll leave you to look up Hermeticism for yourself. There's considerable overlap between Wicca and other forms of neo-paganism. There's no central organisation for Wicca or any defined doctrine, but it's possible to extract the main common principles from various sources, and I'll provide some links in the description below. Today I'd like to look at some of these principles. The first and perhaps most central principle is a reverence for nature. Wiccans see nature as sacred, often personifying it as divine. Many view the natural world as interconnected, with respect and care for the earth, animals and plants, and the cycles of nature as central to their spirituality. Personifying nature as divine doesn't necessarily mean that nature is seen as God or as a God. Personification is a storytelling mechanism. Personifying the world, perhaps as Gaia, or perhaps personifying various aspects of nature, as Greek and other mythologies have done, provides a way of relating to the world, telling stories about the world. Dreamtime stories, for example, in Australian Indigenous tradition. Such stories are not to be mistaken for science or fact. They are intended to shape our response to the world. Treat the world as if she were a person, as if she were divine. Some people may take this literally. I certainly wouldn't, and I suspect a literal interpretation would lead to problems. But I can't criticise this as a principle. The other important part of this, of course, is the concept of interconnectedness, the idea that what happens in one part of nature affects the whole of nature. Also that we are part of nature, and what we do to nature, we do to ourselves. The second principle is polytheism. Most Wiccans honour both a god and a goddess, often understood as complementary forces. The goddess is frequently seen as a mother or fertility deity, and the god as a consort or seasonal deity, embodying natural cycles. Some may worship other deities or view divinity as a universal, genderless force. Again, I'm not suggesting that this is literally true, but as a mythological story, it's much better for there to be both a masculine and feminine expression of the divine. Both are represented within the divine, and even better, other non-gendered or multi-gendered expressions of the divine. The Abrahamic religions have struggled to find ways of representing the feminine in the divine, though the feminine has often found a way to break in. I think it's much healthier when the feminine and other gender possibilities are represented by the divine in our guiding stories. The third principle is the Wiccan reed. This ethical guideline is usually summarized as, "and it harm none, do what ye will." I have some reservations about this principle in that I don't think it goes far enough. It's argued that it promotes personal freedom and responsibility with a strong emphasis on non-harmful intentions and actions. It's argued that it serves as a moral compass, encouraging Wiccans to act thoughtfully towards others and the environment. I don't think this is entirely true, largely because it's framed negatively. Not harming others is not the same as, nor does it obviously promote, positive action towards others. I don't object to the principle. I don't think it encourages wrong or harmful behaviour. I just don't think that it goes far enough. In that respect, the golden rule, as expressed, for example, in Matthew chapter 7, verse 12, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you," is a better principle. It's also better than the Buddhist and Confucian principle, which is also sometimes referred to as the golden rule: "Whatever is disagreeable to yourself, do not do unto others." This principle is also framed negatively rather than positively. The fourth principle is the law of threefold return, sometimes called the threefold law. This principle suggests that any energy, whether positive or negative, that one puts into the world will return to them threefold. This, it is argued, reinforces ethical conduct and self-awareness in one's actions and intentions. Again, I don't think this should be taken literally, like the physical law: for every action there is an equal but opposite reaction. It's not something, I think, that is intended to be understood as happening automatically. Rather, it's a kind of warning and also a promise. The concept of energy is vague, the force be with you kind of thing, crystal energy and so on. When taken too literally, it can lead, I think, to some silliness. But there is perhaps a kind of truth underlying this that's worth thinking about, namely that in some way evil begets evil and good begets good. Bearing this in mind when you're acting in the world seems like a good idea. The fifth principle is a belief in magic. This is viewed as a natural force that can be harnessed through intention, ritual, and alignment with nature's energies. Spellwork and rituals are performed for self-transformation, healing, protection, and alignment with life goals. Again, if taken literally, this can lead to silliness. It can lead to the same silliness as other kinds of magical thinking, such as superstition and intercessory prayer. Also, the idea of energy that is again evoked here can lead to some silliness if taken literally. However, the idea of alignment seems like a good one. Swimming with the current rather than against it, if I may be permitted to use some imagery of my own. In a broader sense, trying to determine what's going on and to fit in with that. Also, when spells and rituals are seen as self-transformative or self-healing, this at least does no harm. I don't mean that such spells or rituals can heal you from some kind of serious medical condition. This again becomes magical thinking of the worst kind. But perhaps these rituals can prepare you inwardly for facing the difficulties ahead. I've said the same about prayer as Christians understand it. As a means of manipulating reality, I think it's nonsense. But as a means of transforming yourself, it's potentially positive. The sixth principle is the celebration of the Wheel of the Year. Wiccans observe 8 Sabbats, or seasonal holidays, throughout the year, marking the cycles of nature. These include solstices, equinoxes, and cross-quarter days such as Samhain, Beltane, and Imbolc. Each Sabbat celebrates changes in the earth and the phases of the god and the goddess. What a great idea, aligning yourself with the natural world. Many of the Christian celebrations are also linked to the cycles of nature in this way, although the original connection is sometimes lost or purposely buried under various undesirable accretions. Of course, the Greek myths of the gods also reflect these cycles. Overall, this idea fits well with the concept of nature as divine and also aligning oneself with natural energy. It's all about working with nature rather than against it, as opposed to seeing nature as something to be ruled, mastered, and exploited. This video is getting rather long, so I'll just touch briefly on a couple of other principles. The 7th principle is personal responsibility and self-exploration. Wicca places high value on personal spiritual growth, self-discovery, and taking responsibility for one's own path. Many Wiccans focus on developing self-knowledge, inner peace, and self-empowerment. The 8th and final principle that I want to consider here today is respect for individual paths. Wicca encourages diversity in belief and practice, with a strong respect for individual interpretations of spirituality. Eclecticism is common, with practitioners drawing from many different traditions and creating personalized forms of worship. This goes back to what I said at the very beginning. Wicca has no central creed and no central organization. There's no one telling you what to believe and what to do. People come together because they have things in common. They aren't brought together and then coerced into having things in common. The focus is on developing your own spirituality, developing your own relationship with the world, and developing your own spiritual and ethical practices. Of course, this doesn't preclude drawing upon the beliefs, traditions, and experience of others. In fact, that's encouraged, whether these other traditions would self-identify as Wiccan or not. So Wicca offers alternative stories about the world, our relationship with it and with each other, about our relationship to the divine and our understanding of ourselves. Many of these ideas I'm certainly happy to adopt as guiding principles for myself, stripped of any silliness, of course. I can do this without believing in gods or magic or mysterious energies. Find the stories that work for you.